What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. Now today I wanted to present to you with my meta analysis for January 2017. This is a new series I'm going to start producing simply because I know sometimes it can be hard to keep up with the meta and really know what's going on, especially if you take a small break from the game, even for a couple weeks. The meta is an ever-evolving beast, and keeping up with it can sometimes be a little bit difficult. So the whole purpose of this series of videos is to keep you informed on what is currently in the meta, so when you go to your next competitive event, you'll have the advantage of knowing what you'll be playing against, as well as having some cards and tools at your disposal to help do well. So before I get into that, I kind of want to help define what a meta is. Now, if you were to go to a tournament that has 1,000 players playing 1,000 decks, if you were to look at the top 2, 3, or even 4 decks that are the most represented in that field, that is what's consisted of the meta, and anything else is technically considered rogue, because the meta is the combination of the most represented decks. And defining the meta is really important when it comes to going to any large-scale tournament, because if you can define the meta and know what the best, or rather most represented decks are, then you can prepare for it by having whether your main deck prepared for playing those strategies or having an appropriate side decking strategy to help you counteract the decks that you're going to be seeing the most of. Because if you're doing well at a tournament, the higher you go, the more often you're going to see meta decks, and that means you're going to be more prepared to face those meta decks moving forward. So what I wanted to do was, the last 2 big events we had were YCS Anaheim and YCS Bochum, and I wanted to use the data that we've compiled from those events to help kind of define the meta for January 2017, because until we get a ban list, and this whole video is subject to change of that ban list, and if we get that, I'll probably have to make a whole new meta analysis video in general. But for the time being, the meta's been pretty consistent for the past few months. And if you look at the graphic from YCS Bochum that they provided to us, you can see here, out of all the players in the field, the top decks were Metal Foes, ABC, Paleozoic, Mermail, Awesome Hero, and then there's some Blue Eyes and some Phantom Knight Burning Abyss thrown in there as well. Now this would be considered the meta for that event. Anything else other than that, quite honestly, anything else other than maybe the top 5 decks, maybe Blue Eyes might just slide in there as well, but those are the decks that you're going to be more than likely facing at a tournament that's the size of YCS Bochum. Even at your locals, if your locals is highly competitive, these are the decks that you're more than likely going to be facing against, and that you should be preparing for to help do well in any sort of competitive environment. And it's really important to know this because, like I mentioned earlier, this helps your deck building, this helps your side deck building, your strategies for what the deck is that you're playing, so that you have a game plan moving into that event, whether it's something as small as a locals or something as large as a YCS. Now, moving forward beyond that, it's important to look at the top 32s, or the top cut as it's called, because seeing just the high representation of decks is important, because the more players that there are playing a specific deck means you're more often not going to see that deck. But it's also important to see what's winning, because the best deck could have, 700 people playing it, but if none of them top, that either means that everyone that was playing that deck is really terrible, or there was another strategy that was created to beat the meta, and so on and so forth. So it's important to look that, even though with this infographic from YCS Bochum having Metal Foes at the top, if you combine both top 32s from YCS Anaheim and YCS Bochum, you actually have ABC having the most tops, coming in at 15, Metal Foes sliding in at 13, and then Paleozoic coming in at 11. And then on top of that too, Awesome Hero comes in at 8, which I think is a very significant number. Mermail's in there at 4, and then, there's some other ones like Blue Eyes and Dark Lord as well. So this is another just resource that you can use to kind of see that if you're going to a large event, not only do you know what's making up the vast representation of decks, but you know what has the highest success of winning based off of past results. And that's really important as well, because usually these results are going to correlate. Now, I know that, ABC and Metal Foes are pretty much interchangeable at this point, and Paleozoic's kind of in there, making up the tier 1 decks. And then you have like your tier 1.5, which is like Awesome Hero and Mermail, and then you have your tier 2 decks being, Blue Eyes and Dark Lord, and, you know, all those types of decks as well. And anything not really included there is technically considered a rogue deck because it hasn't really done very well competitively and hasn't really gotten any representation whatsoever. So, moving on from there, that's going to be pretty much your breakdown for what you can expect until January 20th hits and we get the DDD structure deck. Now, the DDD structure deck is going to have a major impact because we are finally going to have full power DDD essentially be a threat. And once that time comes, we're going to start seeing tournament results come in, and it's going to have a significant impact on this current meta. And it's not going to take very long for those results to come in because I'm pretty sure DDD is probably going to start destroying everything for the time being. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be tier 0 or anything like that, but you're definitely going to see DDD make its presence known on this list, and you might see some of the other decks, you know, shorten how much exposure they have in the competitive field. Now, for some recommendations, what can I recommend that if you're going to a competitive event is probably some of the best cards to use against the top meta decks? Well, starting off with Metal Foes, you know, you've got cards like Retaliating Sea and Anti-Spell Fragrance. With ABC, you've got System Down, which is basically like running 3 copies of Regeki specifically against the deck. Against Paleozoics, you've got cards like Denko Sekka and Jinzo. Even though they can be somewhat easily outed, if they don't have the way to out it, then they're pretty fucked. Awesome Hero, you've got cards like Max C and Gamma Seal. Gamma Seal being very important because you want to have a way to tribute over the Totally Awesomes because those can be very hard to deal with, or even the Dark Law, depending on what's the biggest threat that poses to your deck. And then against Mermail, you've got Max C, and then Abyss Dweller is always an amazing option as well if your deck can support the rank 4 engines. So that's going to do it for January 2017's meta analysis. I'll probably do another one of these if we either get the ban list this month or once the DDD structure deck lands and we get some tournament results coming in, because DDD is definitely going to make a significant impact on this list. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. I really hope you guys like this new series. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and be sure to back me on Patreon as well, because just by pledging that $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you this amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thank you guys so much again. We'll see you next time.